My mother used to say it like it was wisdom, not advice, not comfort. Wisdom. Money isn't everything. She said it when I worked late. She said it when I skipped vacations. She said it when I chose stability over excitement. And every time she said it, she smiled at me the same way, gently, indulgently, like she was humoring a child who hadn't learned what really mattered yet. So when she stood in my kitchen holding that envelope, staring at the name printed on the front, I knew something was different. Because she wasn't smiling. The envelope had arrived that morning. Thick. Official. My name typed cleanly across the front. No return address I recognized. I'd left it unopened on the counter while I made coffee, barely glancing at it. My mother, on the other hand, had noticed immediately. "What's that?" she asked, nodding toward it. "Probably nothing," I said. "Some paperwork." She picked it up anyway. She always did that, touching things that weren't hers, asking questions she already felt entitled to answers for. She turned it over once, twice. Then she opened it. I didn't stop her. I think part of me wanted her to see it this way. Unexpected, unfiltered. She pulled out the folded pages, scanning quickly at first, then slower, then not at all. She just stared. The room went quiet in a way that felt heavy, like the air had thickened around us. Finally, she cleared her throat. "Is this real?" she asked. I looked at the paper in her hands. The check was clipped neatly to the top page. $600,000. Payable to me. My name. My spelling. No mistakes. "Yes," I said. She laughed once, short and breathless, like someone who wasn't sure if they were allowed to react yet. "Well," she said slowly, handing it back to me, "I guess money isn't everything, but certainly helps." There it was. The pivot. The moment her tone shifted. Not proud, not happy, but impressed. And that was when I felt it. Not joy, not relief. Something colder. Because for the first time in my life, my mother was looking at me like I'd done something right. Not because I was kind. Not because I was responsible. Not because I'd survived things she never protected me from. But because a number on a piece of paper was big enough to change her posture. What she didn't know, what she couldn't see, was how long that check had been coming. How many years I'd been dismissed while building the life that led to it. How often she'd used "money isn't everything" to excuse her favoritism, her interference, her indifference. I watched her carefully as she sat down at my table. She smoothed the paper flat, lined up the edges, treated it with more care than she ever had my plans. "Where did this come from?" she asked, casual, but not really. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to tell her, but because I knew the moment I did, something would change between us. Money doesn't just reveal values. It rearranges them. "It's from an estate," I said finally. Her head snapped up. "Estate," she repeated. "Whose?" I met her eyes, and in that moment, I remembered every time she'd told me not to aim too high. Every time she'd warned me not to be selfish. Every time she'd reminded me that success didn't make someone good. She was already calculating, already repositioning herself, and I realized something unsettling. She hadn't changed her beliefs. She just found a reason to suspend them. They didn't know what I had already done. And as I folded the check back into the envelope, one thought settled heavily in my chest. If money wasn't everything, why did it suddenly make me worth listening to? My mother didn't ask questions right away. She circled them, like she always did. That afternoon, she stayed longer than usual, cleaned a counter that didn't need cleaning, straightened a stack of mail I hadn't touched in days. She kept glancing at the envelope like it might disappear if she didn't keep track of it. "You know," she said eventually, "I always worried about you." I didn't respond. She took my silence as permission. "You were never like your brother," she continued. "He took risks. You played it safe." Safe. That word had followed me my entire life. She used it when she told me not to apply for scholarships that might disappoint me. She used it when she discouraged me from moving away. She used it when she reminded me that ambition could make a woman hard to love. And every time, it had been framed as care. "I worked hard for what I have," I said quietly. She nodded. "Of course you did. I'm just saying you don't want money to change you." I almost laughed, because money hadn't changed me. It had just arrived late enough for her to notice. She left soon after, but the messages started that evening. Little check-ins. Did you deposit it yet? Banks can be tricky with large amounts. You should talk to someone before you do anything. Concern masquerading as guidance. The next day she called. I was thinking, she said, about how your grandmother used to say family should help family. I closed my eyes. My grandmother had never said that. She'd said protect yourself first. But my mother loved borrowing wisdom from other people's mouths. Is that so? I asked. Well, she continued carefully, is some like that. It can be overwhelming. You don't want to make mistakes. There it was. The assumption that I was unprepared, unqualified, despite years of watching me hold things together while she excused herself from the mess. I have a plan, I said. She hummed softly. Plans change. I let that sit, because my mother had never said money isn't everything when it came to my brother. When he needed help, she found it. When he failed, she softened the landing. When he asked, she didn't lecture. She rescued.
With me, there had always been a lesson attached. Independence framed as virtue. Silence framed as strength. Endurance framed as maturity. The check hadn't just changed her tone. It had exposed the pattern. That weekend, she invited me to lunch. Her treat. A new development. Halfway through the meal, she reached across the table and touched my hand. I'm proud of you, she said. The words landed awkwardly. Too late. Too conditional. Thank you, I replied. But inside, something resisted. Because pride that arrives after proof isn't pride. It's validation seeking. So, she said, stirring her drink, what are you going to do with it? I knew this question. It wasn't curiosity. It was positioning. I'm not sure yet, I said. She smiled. Well, you know I don't need anything. I waited. She continued. But if you ever wanted to help with some things around the house, or maybe set something aside for family emergencies. There it was. The soft ask. Wrapped in humility. Delivered with expectation. What I didn't realize then was how quickly money isn't everything turns into money should be shared, as long as it isn't theirs. I nodded non-committally. And that night, alone in my apartment, I stared at the envelope again. Because the check wasn't the beginning of this story. It was the interruption. The moment the roles shifted just enough to make the imbalance visible. And the question that wouldn't leave me was this. If the money disappeared tomorrow, would her respect disappear with it? The advice started coming faster after that. Not in one overwhelming wave, but in steady, confident drips, like she was easing me towards something we'd never actually discussed. You should really talk to a financial advisor, she said one morning. I know a man from church. No, I replied. I already have one. She paused. Oh. A small word. Heavy with offense. I just mean, she added quickly, you don't want to be taken advantage of. I almost told her that was exactly what I was trying to avoid. Instead, I thanked her. Because gratitude had always been my armor. A few days later, she showed up with a folder. Actual tabs. Color-coded. I've been thinking, she said, setting it on my table. About long-term planning. You'll thank me later. I flipped it open. Inside were printouts. Home repair estimates. Property tax statements. Medical insurance options. None of them were mine. These are for your house, she said casually. Well, my house, but you know what I mean. I did know what she meant. She'd skipped the question entirely. Skipped if. You've always said money isn't everything, I reminded her gently. She laughed. Well, of course. But responsibility is. Responsibility. Another word she liked to bend. She'd never used it when I needed help paying tuition. Never when I worked 2 jobs to stay afloat. Never when I quietly carried things that weighed too much for one person. Now, it arrived with a list. I'm not committing to anything, I said carefully. Her smile tightened. I'm not asking for anything, she replied. We both knew that wasn't true. The next shift came when she started telling other people. Not specifics. Just hints. She's done very well for herself, she told my aunt. She's in a position to help now, she said to a family friend. Help now. As if I'd been waiting for permission. I heard about it secondhand. A cousin texted, "Your mom says you're loaded now." Loaded. Like I'd stumbled into it. Like it hadn't been earned, planned, managed. When I confronted her, she looked genuinely surprised. "I was just proud," she said. "Why are you so sensitive about it?" Because pride that advertises is rarely for the person being praised. That night, I sat alone and tried to trace the feeling in my chest. It wasn't anger. It was recognition. I'd seen this pattern before. When I bought my first car, suddenly she had opinions about what I should drive. When I got promoted, suddenly she had suggestions about how I should spend my time. When I became stable, suddenly she had needs. Money hadn't changed her. It had amplified her. What I didn't realize then was how quickly expectation becomes entitlement when it isn't checked. The first outright request came disguised as a favor. "My roof needs work," she said one afternoon, sighing. The quote is outrageous. I waited. She looked at me. "I'd never ask," she said. I kept waiting. "But if you wanted to help, I wouldn't stop you." There it was. I stared at her, seeing suddenly how much of my life had been shaped by this dance. Her never asking. Me always giving. "I need time to think," I said. Her face changed. Not angry. Hurt. Disappointed. Like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking. "Of course," she said. "I just thought family." Family. The word landed heavier now. Because for the first time, I wondered whether the check hadn't just given me options. It had given me a choice. And the question forming in my mind wasn't about money anymore. It was this. If I said no, who would she say I'd become? I didn't plan it. There was no speech prepared, no dramatic moment where I finally found my voice. It happened quietly, over coffee, on a Tuesday afternoon. The kind of moment my mother always assumed she controlled. She'd come over unannounced again. Set her purse down. Looked around my kitchen like she was inspecting a space that might soon need her input. "I got another estimate," she said, pulling out her phone. "Even higher than the first." I nodded, waiting. "They're saying the whole roof needs to be redone," she continued. "It's just one thing after another." She sighed, long and practiced. I took a breath. "I'm not going to pay for it," I said. The words felt strange in my mouth. Not heavy. Not light. Just accurate. She blinked. "I didn't ask you to," she said quickly. "I know," I replied. "But I'm still saying no." The silence stretched. Her eyes narrowed slightly, like she was trying to recalibrate. "I don't understand," she said. "I thought you cared. I'd known this was coming." "You always said money isn't everything," I said gently. "So this shouldn't change how we treat each other." Her lips pressed together. "That's not what I meant," she said. "This is different. Different. Because now it was my money." She sat back, crossing her arms. "I sacrificed a lot for you," she said. "You know that." I did know. But I also knew how often sacrifice had been used as a debt I could never repay. "I'm grateful," I said. "But this isn't something I'm taking on." Her voice sharpened. "So you'll just let me struggle?" Struggle. In the house she'd lived in for 20 years. With a pension. With savings she never discussed. I chose my words carefully. "I'm not responsible for fixing everything," I said. That was when her face changed. The softness dropped away. The disappointment hardened into something colder. "Well," she said, standing abruptly, "I guess money really did change you." There it was. The accusation. Not about greed. About character. I watched her gather her things, every movement sharp, offended. She stopped at the door and turned back. "I didn't raise you to be like this," she said. I met her eyes. You raised me to be careful, I replied. This is me being careful. She left without another word. The door closed softly behind her. I stood there longer than I expected. Not shaking. Not crying. Just absorbing the weight of what had shifted. Because I knew this wasn't just about a roof. It was about control. About who got to decide what family meant. That night, my phone buzzed. A message from my brother. Mom's upset. Says you're acting brand new. Brand new. As if boundaries were a personality flaw. I didn't respond. Because for the first time, I wasn't interested in managing her feelings. What I didn't realize then was how quickly the story would be rewritten. How fast I said no would become, she thinks she's better than us. And how public that version would become. Because when someone loses access, they don't always accept it quietly. Sometimes, they make sure everyone knows exactly who they believe you are now. And the next time my mother spoke about me, she wouldn't be talking to me at all. I didn't hear it from her first. I heard it from my aunt. She called one evening with the kind of careful tone people use when they think they're delivering news gently. Your mom's been having a hard time, she said. She feels like you've changed. Changed. The word again. I'm not sure what you mean, I replied. Well, my aunt continued. She says you're being distant. That you're letting money get to your head. I closed my eyes. So that was the story now. I said no to paying for her roof, I said simply. There was a pause. Oh, my aunt said. I didn't realize. I'm sure, I replied. After that, the comments started filtering in from other places. A cousin posted something vague online about people who forget where they come from. A family friend asked if I was still grounded. Someone else joked, "Don't forget us little people." None of them asked me directly. Because direct questions invite answers. My mother, meanwhile, was performing restraint. No angry messages. No confrontations. Just wounded dignity. She's very busy now, she told people. She has priorities. The implication hung there. I was choosing money over family. What she didn't mention was how quickly her philosophy had changed. Money wasn't everything, until it was something she wanted access to. The first time I saw her after that, it was at a family birthday. She greeted me politely, coolly, barely hugged me. "I'm so proud of how well you're doing," she said loudly for the room. "Even if you've forgotten us." I smiled. Not because it was funny. Because I'd expected it. The party felt strange after that. Conversations went quiet when I approached. People watched. Measured. It was subtle. But it was real. On the drive home, something settled into place. This wasn't about misunderstanding. It was about narrative. And my mother had always been good at that. She framed herself as selfless. Me as independent. And now, me as selfish. The roles fit too easily for people to question them. That night, I drafted a message to her. I rewrote it 5 times. Then deleted it. Because I realized something important. I'd spent my whole life explaining myself to her. Clarifying. Softening. Justifying. And none of it had ever changed how she told the story. The check had only sped things up. What I didn't realize then was how far she'd go once she felt truly challenged. Because saying no wasn't just a boundary. It was a threat. To her authority. To her image. And soon, she wouldn't just talk around me. She'd talk about me. In ways that couldn't be taken back. And when that happened, the question wouldn't be whether I could afford to help her. It would be whether I was willing to buy my place back into the family. The family dinner wasn't my idea. I almost didn't go. But I knew if I didn't, the story would harden without me in the room. Absence had always worked against me. So I went. The house was full. Too full. The kind of gathering where everyone pretends it's casual while watching each other closely. My mother was already there, moving through the kitchen like a host, even though it wasn't her house. She hugged everyone else longer than she hugged me. I noticed. So did she. Dinner went smoothly at first. Too smoothly. Small talk. Safe topics. Laughter that felt rehearsed. Then, just as plates were being cleared, my mother stood. She raised her glass. "I just want to say how grateful I am," she began, voice warm, practiced, "for family." My chest tightened. "For showing up for each other," she continued. "For remembering that success means nothing if you forget the people who loved you before you had it." Eyes shifted. Someone nodded. Then she turned to me. Directly. "And I hope," she said, smiling tightly, "that when we're blessed, we remember to share those blessings." The room went quiet. This wasn't subtle. This was a challenge. A public one. Every face turned toward me. I felt that familiar pressure, the old instinct to smooth things over, to sacrifice my comfort for harmony. But something in me refused. I set my fork down carefully. "I agree," I said evenly. "Which is why I believe generosity should be voluntary, not expected." A ripple moved through the table. My mother's smile froze. "I'm not expecting anything," she said quickly. "I was just speaking generally." "Of course," I replied. "I'm speaking generally too." Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. My brother cleared his throat. "Well," he said, laughing nervously, "that got serious." But it didn't break. Because something had cracked. My mother sat down slowly. Her eyes didn't leave me. Not angry. Wounded. But there was something else there too. Recognition. Because for the first time, I hadn't backed down. After dinner, she cornered me in the hallway. "You embarrassed me," she whispered sharply. "I answered you," I replied. "You didn't have to make it about money," she said. "You did," I replied calmly. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. And in a way, she didn't. Because the version of me she'd relied on, the agreeable one, the endlessly understanding one, was no longer available. As I left that night, my aunt squeezed my arm. "I think," she said quietly, "this has been a long time coming." I nodded. Because it had. What I didn't realize then was that my mother had been waiting for this moment too. Not to reconcile, but to decide whether she would respect my boundary or test it one last time. And when she made that choice, it would reveal something she'd never said out loud before. Something she couldn't take back. She called me 3 days later. Not angry. Not crying. Calm. Which, with my mother, was always more dangerous. "I've been thinking," she said, "about everything." I leaned against my kitchen counter and waited. "I don't want us to be like this," she continued. "Distant. Awkward." "I don't either," I said honestly. There was a pause. Then she said it. "I just don't understand why you wouldn't help me when you clearly can." There it was. Not need. Not emergency. Not love. Can. And suddenly, all the years of advice, warnings, and moral lessons rearranged themselves into something unmistakably clear. This had never been about values. It had been about access. "I'm not punishing you," I said slowly. "I'm making a choice." She sighed, like I was exhausting her. "You know," she said, "I didn't raise you to be this, transactional." I almost smiled. Because that was the moment. The moment she finally stopped pretending this was about concern. "You raised me to survive without help," I replied. "And I did." Silence. Then, quieter, sharper. "So that's it. You have money now, and suddenly you're above us." Above. That word told me everything. "I was never below you," I said. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was cold. "I hope that check was worth it." I hung up after that. Not dramatically. Just done. The next few weeks were quieter than I expected. No apologies. No escalation. Just distance. Family gatherings I wasn't invited to. Conversations I heard about later. A soft but deliberate exclusion. And strangely, I felt lighter. Because the tension I'd carried my whole life, the need to be good enough, generous enough, small enough, finally released its grip. I deposited the check. I invested carefully. I paid off debts no one ever offered to help with. I built a safety net I'd never been given. And I didn't give her a cent. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. Months later, we ran into each other at the grocery store. She looked at me like she was searching for something. Guilt, maybe. Regret. Or proof that I'd become the person she warned everyone about. She didn't find it. You look well, she said. So do you, I replied. She hesitated. I just want you to know, she said, money still isn't everything. I smiled softly. No, I said. But it shows you who people think you are. She looked away. And in that moment, I understood something that took me years to learn. Money didn't change our relationship. It revealed it. It showed me that love, when it's conditional, always comes with a price. And that the most expensive thing I'd ever paid for wasn't peace. It was approval. One I no longer needed. What I didn't realize at the beginning, standing in my kitchen, watching her stare at that check, was that the real inheritance wasn't $600,000. It was the freedom to say no without explaining myself. To be generous by choice, not obligation. To walk away from guilt dressed up as love. And to finally understand this. When someone says, money isn't everything, but treats you differently once you have it, they were never talking about values. They were talking about power. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.